Okay, today is Thursday, October 27th. Good morning, everybody. The time is 9:23 a.m. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Alameda County Lead Poisoning Prevention Programs Joint Powers Authority. Please note that this meeting is being conducted pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, which authorizes certain exceptions to the Brown Act during the COVID state of emergency. This board is authorized to conduct its meeting via video conference today pursuant to those exceptions and can make findings not less than every 30 days to continue such meetings via video conference during the governor's declared state of emergency. Should the board find that it is in the health, safety, and welfare for the members of the public, the staff, and this board to conduct meetings via video conference. We have made that determination, and that's why today's meeting is taking place in this fashion. Members of the public who wish to participate during the agenda items on today's agenda will have the opportunity to do so. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item. When I call for public comment, members of the public can use the raise hand feature on Zoom or press *9 on their telephone to be recognized by the chair and be given 2 minutes to speak on each item. Presentations today will be given by members of the public as well as our staff. And if there are questions or concerns about any of the items presented today, those can be directed to our staff via email, which is provided for on today's agenda. I'd like to begin by asking if Chantal would please take the roll call.
Good morning. Director Hardy.
Go ahead and call the next member.
Okay, Director Brown, alternate Savas.
Absent.
Director Vella.
Present.
Director Wengraf.
Present.
Director Gallo.
Present.
And Director Bowders.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. Now is the time for public comment for items that are not on today's agenda. A member of the public who wishes to comment for something we won't have on today's agenda will get 2 minutes to do so. Chantal, did we receive any written comments submitted in advance of today's meeting?
No.
Okay, and I see no hands raised. Public comment is now closed. And we'll move to agenda item 3, which is our consent calendar, which includes 2 items, the resolution AB 361 continuing remote teleconference meetings, and also the meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2022. Directors, are there questions, comments, or things that you'd like to pull from the consent calendar? Seeing none, is there public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, is there a motion on the consent calendar?
So move. Second.
Motion by Gallo, second by Wengraf to approve the consent items. Please call the roll.
Just say the roll again.
You call them each time and they vote now. Yes.
Director Hardy.
Director Hardy, if you're present, you need to unmute and give a vote. Okay, she's absent.
Okay. Director Brown, alternate Savas.
Absent.
Director Vella.
Aye.
Vella, aye. Director Wengraf.
Yes.
Wengraf, aye. Director Bowders.
Aye.
Bowders, aye. Director Gallo.
Aye.
Gallo, aye.
Okay, the motion passes. Those items are approved. Thank you. Item 4 is a presentation, Lead in Residential Soil, a community assessment from Alameda County. And I'd like to use this as a point of personal privilege to welcome everybody from Emory Unified School District. I greatly appreciate all the staff and students being so patient this morning and waiting for us. Apologies for that. I know your time is precious. So if you would please, as we previously discussed, just raise your hand now if you're going to be part of this presentation. And what we'll do is I will be pressing the button to promote you to speaking abilities. Just raise your hand once and just leave it there. I'll be giving you speaking abilities and you'll need to accept. When I click it, it'll say you've been offered the opportunity to speak. You can just unmute yourself at this point when you get that invite over the computer. It'll be one of you at a time. So, and then once I have everybody up here, we will do a student presentation. It's only if you're speaking in today's item here. Give me 1 second to get through all of you. I see.
So this is Jim from eBay's. Dale or Chantal, do you have the presentation? You guys were running it on your side, right?
Yes, I do have the presentation. I'll be sharing my screen and let me know when.
Okay, and when you come on up, you can just go ahead and keep yourself on mute until it's your turn to speak. And everybody who I've promoted to speaking, you can lower your hand now as well, so I don't double click you by accident. Great, you guys are so good at this. Look at you. This is the best part about working with young people, is so easy with technology. Okay, give me one more minute because I have two more. Okay, I think. Okay, I have one more student to promote. Okay, I'm going to be promoting one person to panelist because their Zoom version is very old. Okay, so all the hands have been addressed, and I would like to turn it over to our presenters to give us their presentation on the community assessment for lead in soil. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
So good morning, everyone. This is Dale Hagan with the Healthy Homes Department. I would just like to introduce Kevin Cuff. Kevin Cuff is a nationally recognized science education program developer and researcher based at UC Berkeley's Lawrence Hall of Science, trained as a geologist with a graduate focus on the geochemistry of gases in active volcanic systems. Kevin is the founding director of the East Bay Academy for Young Scientists, or EBASE. EBASE works to provide high-quality scientific research experiences that enhance critical thinking skills, raise awareness of important environmental and social issues, and support development and educational efforts in the Bay Area communities. Currently, Kevin serves as the National Science Foundation Principal Investigator on 3 projects that are examining sociological and educational impacts associated with public involvement in environmental science research. So now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Cuff.
Good morning, Mr. Cuff. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me well?
We can. Thank you.
Thank you. As Dale mentioned, I'm the director of EBASE. Originally, EBASE was designed to provide opportunities for youth to enhance not only their science understanding of science content, but also to enhance their science practice skills development through engaging them in community-based, authentic science research that addresses relevant environmental and social concerns. And I should stress that our intent is to provide opportunities for youth to engage in authentic science research activities that generate information that's useful to the communities within which the students reside. Can we have the next slide, please? The primary rationale for developing EBASE was the belief in the notion that as youth apply their science understanding and practice skills to address important, relevant concerns, that they would better be able to make connections between science and societal issues. Oftentimes, science is presented as if it exists in a vacuum, and students don't understand the relevance of science as it applies to real world conditions and real world problems. So we aim to sort of enable youth to make that connection between science and actual problems that they and members of their communities face. And in doing so, we hope that the youth will come away with an understanding that science can be a tool for confronting and/or reducing environmental and social injustices that occur. Next slide, please. EBASE also includes a learning science research component, wherein we're trying to assess the impact that our programming has on students that we work with. To measure impacts, we use well-tested survey and interview tools. And some of the significant findings that we've come up with lately include the fact that significant increases in what we refer to as science agency. And science agency is, we define that as how an individual identifies with science, how an individual values science, and how they feel, and whether or not they feel confident in engaging in science. We have found that increases in science education, in science agency, occur regardless of gender, racial or ethnic background, or school level. So we've seen significant, statistically significant increases in science agency associated with many of the students that we have engaged in our science research activities. In addition to students increasing their awareness of environmental injustices and the impacts that those injustices have on their communities, we've seen that there seems to be a correlation between their development of science agency and their interest in actually addressing some of these issues through activism. So currently, we're interested in exploring whether or not youth have an opportunity to develop an activist tendencies as a result of participating in community-based research activities that we expose them to. Next slide, please. A prime example of the type of work that we do with students or youth is the work that you'll see and hear after I'm done babbling. Participants in the instance that you'll be seeing later, they've participated in the collection, analysis, interpretation, and presentation of data that they've derived from soil-led contamination studies that have been conducted in not only Emeryville, but other parts of the East Bay, including different sections of Oakland. In addition to sort of learning environmental science related job skills, again, through this research that the students have engaged in, they are developing an understanding of how the application of the skills that they're learning can be used to critically address social and environmental justice issues. So again, it's important that we think it's important that we provide opportunities like the ones that you'll hear about, so that students are able to connect science to something that's relevant in their lives. There's a large body of research that suggests that this is an important component that's necessary to continue to increase the interest of urban students in sciences, if you provide opportunities for them to connect the science to real world issues, etc. Next slide, please. So in order for the findings that eBay's young scientists, in order for their findings to be taken seriously as part of eBay's programming, we provide them with access to state-of-the-art professional technology tools. So they use equipment, et cetera, that professional scientists use in their collection of data and their compilation and interpretation of data. So as you listen to the presentations of the young scientists today, in addition to you noting their overall efforts and accomplishments, please pay close attention to the findings that they have unearthed. These findings, I think, are very important for all of us to take into consideration. Next slide, please. So I'll turn it over to the young scientists from this point moving forward. Thank you for inviting us to share the work that we've been doing over the past year and a half.
Thank you, Kevin. And who will be speaking first?
I believe
I will be speaking.
it will be Jim.
Great.
Yes.
Welcome, Jim.
I is next.
Greetings, this is Kai. I'm 23 years old. I'm representing the Good Brothers Network. And to begin our slide, we're going to discuss lead in our community and why do we care. Next slide, please. So we are connected and concerned about the lead in our community for the potential long-term neurological damages it has in our young brothers and sisters. California DPH report in 2020 showed that 219 youth had preventable lead poisoning in Alameda County. Next slide, please. I'll be passing it off.
Oh. Hi, my name is Andrea Pelayo. I am 16 years old. I'm from Emory High, and I will be showing how we conducted our study. Next slide, please. The first thing we did was collect soil and placed them in bags. Afterwards, we dried and sieved them to 10 millimeters. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Trinity from Emory High School. I'm 17 years old. We used the portable XRF to scan the samples and determine levels of lead, arsenic, mercury, and uranium. We analyzed and graphed that data and then plotted it on a map. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Jim from eBay's. I authored the Lead and Justice curriculum and taught all the classes from which you'll see the data from here. So before we see the data, I'd like to take a moment to outline how we interpreted the data. So this slide shows a scale of 4 different buckets. We built this scale based on a guidance from the California Department of Toxic Substances, specifically the Note 3 from published in 2019, that sets the MCLs, the maximum contamination limit, at 80 parts per million for residential soils. We also derived information from UPenn Center for Excellence in Environmental Toxicology in the EPA. So to elucidate how we interpret our results here, we have 4 buckets. We have a 0 to 80 ppm of lead, which we consider acceptable, the 80 to 400 ppm, which from the SEAT guidance suggests that people reduce kids' exposure and grow food in raised beds. 400 to 1,000 ppm restrict children and don't grow food at all. And then everyone agrees that over 1,000 ppm is an extreme hazard. So as you see our results, we interpret them as the green being acceptable with an MCL of 80 ppm. Next slide, please. Gina, that's you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Gina.
Yes.
So this slide is what we found presented on a neighborhood scale. Next slide, please. So here is a bar graph that represents the amount of lead that were in each soil sample that we collected. On the y-axis, it represents the concentration of lead parts per million, and the red line represents the 80 parts per million threshold for California's threshold of lead parts per million. As you can see here, the majority of the lead samples exceeded the red line. Next slide, please. Here is a pie chart that represents how there's 18%, only 18% of the lead samples were considered within acceptable range of lead for residential living soils. Every other color in this pie chart is considered exceeding the threshold for the 80 parts per million of lead in soil. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Sean from Love Family Community Development. This first slide is a bar graph of the 99 soil samples that my group collected from East Oakland. The y-axis again represents the concentration in parts per million of lead in each sample. The red line represents the threshold of 80 ppm for safe residential soils. And as you can see, the vast majority of the samples range above that level. We can even see a couple samples above 1,000 ppm. Next slide, please. So this pie chart is a histogram of distribution of concentrations in the samples. The green represents the acceptable levels of lead in soil, while all other colors are above the acceptable limits. As you can see in my group's collection, only 9% of the samples were within the acceptable range, while 81% were and 91% were considered unacceptable. Next slide, please.
Gina, that's you?
Estimate of the samples we graphed. Only the green dots are within the acceptable limit. Next slide, please.
Hello, this is Mongrad, 15-year-old, 16-year-olds from Emory High. And this bar graph shows each house on 47th Street as we progress into each house. And this bar graph shows very high lead levels. Next slide, please. This, after we found a few samples that were very high in Temescal Park, we did further investigations and found only like a few, like majority samples were safe. And we concluded that like since the park was like rebuilt, so they covered the soil on top, and this shows the cap and seal method works. Next slide, please. These two pie charts show a few. So the 100,000 block of 47th Street shows only 81% were unacceptable, while only 19% were acceptable. While in the Temescal was 13% unacceptable and 87 samples were acceptable. Next slide, please. So this map shows how we started from Emory High School and went down the 47th Street. And then we went to Temescal Park and found a few high samples. So we did further investigations. And also we took some samples on Gilman Street to see if the surrounding areas were high as well. Next slide, please.
This is Eugenia.
Maybe we lost Gina, so I'll take her slide for her. So while we were in East Oakland with the Lau Family Community Development, we ran across a couple places that we investigated further. So here's a case study in a remodel. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Sean again. As you can see, the poor maintenance has caused lots of paint chips to be spread around the vicinity of the renovated house. Next slide, please. And we even saw paint chips mobilize across the fence and into the neighbor's yard, which has grave implications. Next slide, please.
Hello, this is Monkra again from Emory High. And these images show how we found like mobilized paint chips near houses that were being renovated on 47th Street. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Andrea again. As we walked through 47th Street, we noticed that there were houses being remodeled and there was big and heavy equipment being used, but there was no evidence of moist on the ground, meaning there was dust being formed. Next slide, please.
Kai, this is you.
Greetings, this is Kai. So this graph is representing the samples that we collected in the West Oakland region. As you can see, majority of the graph is excelling that baseline of 80 parts per million. So this is very concerning for us, and I'm glad we're able to have it documented. Something I want to highlight is 2 paint samples that were collected in West Oakland. One contained 18,200 parts per million, while the other contained 12,300 parts per million. Next slide, please. So this graph is detailing our histogram of our data. As you can see, 86% is unacceptable, which is very concerning, while only 14% is acceptable. Next slide, please. This data here shows a graph of the plotted areas locations. So as you can see, the colors are majorly yellow and red, and we have like very scarce splatters of green, letting us know that there are not many access to safe levels less than 80 parts per million. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Trinity again, filling in for the Good Brothers Network. Out of the 57 samples found, only a few of them were below the 80 parts per million. Next slide, please. This pie chart is a histogram of the distribution of concentrations in the sample. The green represents the acceptable levels. There's only 23% acceptable levels, while there are 77% unacceptable levels. Next slide, please. This map has all the samples plotted. As you can see, there's a clear red spot right next to different Park, and this is very worrying for children. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Kylia. I'm 12. I work for the Good Brothers Network. And this is a bar graph. On the y-axis, we have the concentration of lead parts per million. And on the x-axis, we have how many soil samples we collected. And the red line is the threshold of 80 parts per million. And as you can see on this bar graph, most of the samples exceed the threshold for 80 parts per million. Next slide, please. This is a pie chart of how many samples were acceptable and how many samples were unacceptable. As you can see, 25% of samples were acceptable, while 75% of samples weren't. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Andrea again. This graph shows our latest sample from last Saturday. The y-axis shows the concentration of lead part per million, and the red line shows the threshold of 80 parts per million, which is the limit. As we can see is that the vast majority of our samples were exceeding that level. Next slide, please. This pie chart shows the concentration of lead. It shows that 39 of the samples were acceptable, while 61% of the samples were unacceptable. Next slide, please.
This is Jim from eBay's again. I'd just like to take a second in this home stretch to look at possible future collaborations. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, this is Kai. Sorry, Kai.
It's all good. Thank you for that, Jim. In conclusion, there is a significant amount of soil lead contamination in our Alameda County. It is very clear from our data. And because of this significant levels in our community, it puts our brothers and sisters at extreme risk. Next slide, please.
Now it's my turn. Thank you. So Jim from eBay's again here. Next slide, please. It's always been my personal mission to add value to everything I do. Like in my family, we have a motto called lift as you climb. That as you climb, you always bring people with you. And I think we have one of those opportunities in front of us right now. Residential soil concentrations per census tract aren't well defined currently in our area. So I think we have an opportunity to produce rigorous lead data, but all conducted by youth. This will leverage eBay's and its community partners to bring additional workforce readiness, because we all know the future is becoming more and more complicated with the ubiquitous correlation between communities of color, under-resourced communities, environmental contaminants, climate change, etc. So eBay's is really good at creating a future workforce with skills. So with guidance and funding from the JPA, we could deepen the JPA's relationship with the community, build a group of youth skilled for problems of today and tomorrow, and create lead data per census tract to inform remediation efforts. Next slide, please.
Hi, this is Kai again. So this was a poem that was cultivated amongst the youth in the eBay's the program. It's called There Ain't No Flowers. I wish I didn't know about the dirt. I played in the dirt. My life could have been changed forever. Like, damn, it is despicable. Children can't breathe. There's no fresh air, just lead dust. My neighborhood is filled with young Black children, and here, there ain't no flowers. Next slide, please.
We appreciate your attention and giving our students an opportunity to tell you about the work they've been doing. We're open to any questions you might have.
Well, thank you very much, Jim and presenters. Thank you for taking the share screen down. Very good job. And what I'd like to do first is I'll call for public comment. Members of the public who wish to comment on this presentation will get 2 minutes to do so. And I would like to recognize for 2 minutes the principal. Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all at the JPA for hearing our students and all of the wonderful collaborative effort that has gone into learning about lead in our community. I wanted to thank Dr. Cuff and Dr. Jim for all of their support of our students and giving our kids this opportunity. It's been a wonderful experience for the school, for the students individually, and it is an immense point of pride for myself in our district because of what our students have been able to accomplish. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who is involved. Your work is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Principal. Good for being here and for all the good work you do with our Emory High students. As always, friend, it's nice to see you, even if it's only virtually today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other members of the public who wish to comment? Okay, seeing none, we will turn to discussion, and I'll ask directors if they have questions for the presenters or feedback. Director Wengraf.
Well, I want to thank everybody for this really informative and actually very alarming presentation today. You did a fabulous job. My question is, I know that there are tests that are done on soils when there's a suspicion of toxics in the ground. Is lead one of the toxics that's tested for?
Who would like to answer that question?
Yes, lead is one of the toxins we look for, as long as uranium, arsenic, and mercury, I believe.
So did you include lead in that or not?
Yes.
So lead is tested. So before, for example, if you have a gas station site that's going to be developed for housing, well, we suspect that there are toxics in that ground, in that soil. So one of the requirements, I believe, is that it be tested. So lead would be one of the elements that would be tested, and they would have to clean up the site as a condition of approval. Is that correct?
So this is Jim from eBase, and I'm wondering if Larry or Dale have the answer to that question, because it's not generally in the capacity of what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So when an environmental investigation is being done for development of a site where toxics are suspected, there's a phase 1 evaluation, which researches the history of the property, may do some basic tests, and develops a report and assessment as to whether a phase 2 evaluation is needed. So depending on the nature of the development that's happening, the requirements of the individual city, and kind of what elements are identified, lead is certainly one of the elements, toxics, that is considered in developing those evaluations, and would be tested for when appropriate.
Yeah, and I appreciate, Dale, you mentioned it depends a lot upon the local jurisdictions and their requirements in terms of when EIRs or environmental impact reports are required. One of the things that was very alarming to me watching the slide presentation, and snaps on the poem, was the fact that these students were able to just walk down the street and see a lot of remodeling construction work being done by workers who obviously did not go through the Environmental Protection Agency's renovation, repair, painting rule training, which, as the JPA knows, a month ago, the governor signed Senator Archuleta's bill, Senate Bill 1076, which is going to require that contractors, laborers working on older housing take that one-day training. Here in Garden Grove at the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers annual conference, where there's about 500 of us from all over the state. We're talking about that bill and how we have to get code enforcement officers to take that same training so that they can go out and enforce that new law. And I think we need to do some work in terms of learning what jurisdictional impact reports on areas where new construction in old neighborhoods is taking place. And I will bring that forward to the board of directors here.
Thank you. And thank you again for the presentation. It was great.
Director Gaio?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to our student body and to the leaders of the Emerville School, as well as to the base program. And so, Mr. Brooks, I did bring up to the Open City Council that we are going to be requiring a governmental between the county and the city in terms of the lead issue, the lead responsibility on both sides. So we'll be working with you to schedule a presentation before the Public Safety Committee of the City Council. And secondly, I would like to invite our students to be able to present the information that they discovered in East Oakland and West Oakland. And but I look forward to scheduling that meeting with you for the Public Safety Committee and the public to hear in terms of where we are with this effort. And but I'm extremely grateful to hearing from our students, their involvement, their presentation, and we'll like to also include them before the City Council at the Public Safety Committee. Thank you to all of you. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gaio. I'll just add my appreciation to the students at Emory High for really engaging in science, and not just from an academic perspective, but this is a lived experience for these students. They live in these communities, the Emeryville, the West Oakland, and other parts of Oakland. And so I think one of the things that, I really appreciate Jim and Kevin and others who have mentored and helped these students with the scientific rigor of how you do lead testing and what does that mean for the safety of soil in our community and how do we engage in it. But one of the things that we really just should be, I think everyone here on the board has spoken to before, but I just want to call attention to, because it's important to recognize and understand, is that this is the legacy of industrial behavior and institutional racism. These are communities that were redlined for a very long time, where very heavy industrial uses were put alongside Black and Brown families, communities, destroyed historic cultural and business centers that were neighborhoods that were homes to these folks and a century ago. And the lead that lives in the soil today and the other types of pollutants that we are working very hard to remediate out of these communities is a legacy of racism. And so the work you're doing is not work that you should be doing. It should be the work of the people and the communities that created this. But I really am grateful for your leadership as young people in bringing this information to light and helping to keep on point the narrative of why environmental justice is so important in these communities, why it is really important that governments and public agencies prioritize funding for these neighborhoods and communities, and why we let young people lead with their voices, because we really are trying to build a future and a community that is for the people who are living here today, who will be here tomorrow. And it's really important that in doing that, we recognize and understand and are honest about our past. So with that, I want to just thank all the students again for being here. I learned a couple things about 47th Street today and also in relation to Temescal Creek Park. And I'm just going to be reporting that out at Tuesday's council meeting in the city of Emeryville. I'll let people know we have an agenda item called reports on meetings attended, and I report out what happens at this meeting to my fellow council members. And so I will be sharing the Emeryville specific outcomes of your findings with them at a high level so that they understand the good work you're doing at Emory High. Dale.
Yes, so I just wanted to, in terms of another opportunity for information or collaboration, we've been working with the UC Extension on lead and soil and other items for urban food growing. And we do have a presentation this afternoon. And if someone can show me how to share it, because I can't do a group-wide chat. I can only, I think, respond to a Q&A. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. If you look in the Q&A, you will see that under the answered questions, I think it was when Director Wengroff came on. So if folks can see that, or if there's some other way that I can post that, let me know. And that's at 1:30 today. Presentation by the UC Extension, soil sampling, risk mapping, exposure prevention for the urban food grower workshop.
Thank you, Dale. Any other final comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move a few people back to the role of attendee. And you are obviously all welcome to you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting. There isn't much left on the agenda. We're going to just move folks back here real quick. But if you'd like to go, we also understand you have other things to do today. Almost done. I think that takes care of our group. Okay, so once more, thank you so much to the students. And we'll move now to agenda item number 5, which is the November 17th, 2022 JPA board meeting, a proposed cancellation. Director Brooks, did you have anything you wanted to say about this to start?
Yes, I did. Just in terms of the question, if the meeting was to be canceled, does it in any way impact the need to have future hybrid meetings?
Yeah, so I'll tell you how that's worked at 2 other agencies that I'm part of, and obviously we can contact county council as may be appropriate, but 2 other boards I'm on, the law doesn't preclude us from just making a new finding, even if the 30 days expire. Where it has been tricky is that the law applies to subdivisions of a body, so like committees. So if a board, the legislative body, didn't pass something, then and the 30 days expired, the committees of that board wouldn't be able to meet virtually until there was a new finding by the board. We don't have the committee structure anymore, so we can simply put this on the agenda to make the findings at the beginning of a meeting. That's what the Air District does. The Alameda County Transportation Commission has, just to be safe, has taken a practice of having a special meeting with only this item just to approve it if necessary. And we could obviously do that if folks wanted to do that, to just get on to approve and care and for a 5-minute meeting to just make an AB 361 finding to make the December meeting eligible. We can do that if that's what folks want to do. I won't be available on the 16th. I could join for a very brief period of time if we needed to do just an AB 361 resolution and no other business, but I wouldn't be available in November anyway, otherwise for a meeting. So with that understanding, are there directors who wish to comment or discuss the proposed cancellation of the November meeting and move just to the December meeting? Nobody has thoughts on that. Director Wengroff.
Yeah, I'm fine with canceling the meeting and passing whatever resolution it is that you suggested to allow us to continue to meet virtually in December.
Yeah, we would just
Like
essentially,
that's the most prudent thing for us to do.
yeah, we could do it one of two ways. We could either have a special meeting that's just that item, or we could just make it the very first thing we do at the December meeting. That's what the Air District has done. And the lawyers said that that's sufficient, as long as you haven't done any business in the 30 days outside of that 30-day window. If it's the first thing you do is to make the findings, that's sufficient, they said. So we could try that. Directors Guy or Vela, do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, I'm supportive of your recommendation. Thank you.
Okay.
Agree.
We'll take public comment on this item. Members of the public who wish to comment on item 5 will get 2 minutes to do so. Principal Good, I see your hand raised. If you'd like to speak on this, I'll give you 1 second to lower it if you did not want to speak on this. Otherwise, I'm going to recognize you to speak. You are welcome to speak. You have 2 minutes. She may have gone off to put out a fire in the hallways of Emory Unified. Who knows? So I'm going to assume that she's just not with us here anymore. Lower her hand for her. Okay, so we have no public comment. So with that, is there any further discussion?
Do we need a motion?
We will need a motion to cancel. We will need a motion to cancel. I'll just read into the record. I'm fine with canceling and placing that at the top of the December agenda, Director Bella. We do need a motion to do it because it's a regularly scheduled general meeting, and so we need to publicly rescind the meeting if we're going to do that.
Okay, well, if you help me make sure that
You can just cancel the November meeting and we'll take care of the rest.
Okay, I move that we cancel the November meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Director Wengraf and a second by Director Gaia to cancel the November 17th or November 17th.
November meeting.
Yeah, the November meeting. Please call the roll.
Director Hardy,
Director Hardy, if you're wishing to vote, you're on mute. She's absent.
okay, Director Brown,
Absent.
okay, Director Vela,
Aye.
Vela, aye, Director Wengraf,
Aye.
Wengraf, aye, Director Gaio,
Aye.
Gaio, aye, Director Bowders,
Aye.
Bowders, aye.
Okay, the motion carries. The November 17th meeting is canceled, and I'll connect with staff after this meeting to discuss what needs to be done to set up our December meeting. I'll just also use this agenda item briefly to let folks know, if you didn't know, that the governor is rescinding the state of emergency in February. He announced that. So we just need to decide the December meeting. We'll also just have an agenda item to discuss. We'll discuss this again, what we want to do, whether, because we're going to need to come back in person. We also need to just confirm if people still want to meet at Emeryville City Hall as we did prior. It was the central location folks wanted, we were meeting at prior. So whether that's still what we want to do for meetings, we just need to agree upon how we're going to do that when we have to come back in person. So we should have that discussion at the December meeting.
John, do we have, maybe we shouldn't discuss it too much right now, but I know on other agencies that I sit on, there is the option of hybrid.
There's an option of, you can do hybrid, but the state law that was passed that will take effect once AB 361 is no longer in effect requires that a quorum of members be present in order to do that.
So because we're so small.
We will essentially all have to be there anyway.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's going to be the challenge. And Director Gaio, you get the fun part because you hold 65% of the votes. You have to be there no matter what. So all the meetings are going to depend on you. So, but the legal advice we got from the CSA's attorney of the county was that it's a combination of votes and presence. And so 3 of us have to be there, but one of them has to also be Director Gaio. That's the advice we received previously. So we just need to, before February, decide how we should at least have the discussion about how we want to come back, because we're going to need to do that to keep the business going. Okay. So we'll just calendar all of that for December, and then Director Brooks and DL, anything that was planned for a presentation, we'll just roll to the December meeting, from the November meeting to the December meeting. The last thing I'll say on this item is that it was, let's see, 2 years ago in 2020, the city of, I think, Alameda sent the goodies for the Christmas brunch.
Berkeley did it.
You did it last year.
Berkeley did it last year, and you and
Oakland.
Councilmember Gaio, I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, and I was getting to that. I was trying to get around the clock. Like we did Alameda, then we did Berkeley. Now, Mr. Gaio, you and I have a responsibility.
Berkeley did such a great job. I think they ought to continue. They're closer to Emerville.
Oh, look at Oakland nominating its neighbors. Okay. So Director Gaio, don't worry, there's no meeting in November. We have plenty of time. We just need to come up with a plan to sit down with staff to figure out sending the appropriate snacks and goodies, and we'll check in with what was done in the past, and you and I have to figure that out.
Thank you, will do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's just get back to the end of the agenda here because I know people have other things to do. So number 6 is the director's report. How long is this report today?
So it's very short.
Okay.
So good morning, I'm Dale Hagan, Housing Services Manager, Alameda County Healthy Homes Department. I'm acting secretary on behalf of Secretary Brooks, who's attending the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers annual meeting. I have one item today. I want to talk about the HUD Secretary's Award. Last week at the National Lead and Healthy Homes Conference in Baltimore, Healthy Homes Department Director Larry Brooks and I accepted a 2022 HUD Secretary's Award under the category of partnerships and collaborations. Alameda County was one of 10 awardees nationwide, as this year is the 30th year of HUD's Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes. The awards focused on partners and grantees who have been working in partnership with HUD for these last 30 years. Alameda County began its first pilot projects in 1991 before the Title X National Lead Poisoning Prevention Act, and was a HUD Round 1 grantee, which was the study grant to determine how to approach this work. And so it was great to be there and, you know, have those who've been working for these many years, other grantees, the National Center for Healthy Housing, Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, and the staff of the Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes. The theme of the conference this year was very heavily on collaborations and partnerships. And as I noted, I was talking, collaboration and partnerships is not only the best way to do this work, it's really the only way to do this work. And I was very excited to see a lot of kind of new energy to move towards addressing the issue of, you know, lower and lower levels of childhood lead poisoning. Those children that have some lead that we haven't been able to reach out to in the past. The mainstreaming of lead safe property maintenance through working with housing partners, community policymakers, code enforcement, and a lot of new voices and voices that haven't been heard before, you know, speaking out for their communities. So it was very encouraging. And so then I would just also like to express our thanks to Director Wengraf for arranging for a proclamation next month, I understand, for the Berkeley City Council and recognition of the award. So thank you very much for that. And that ends the director's report for today.
Thank you so much, Dale. Are there questions on the director's report? Seeing none, is there public comment on the director's report? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move to item 7, future agenda items. Are there any members who wish to request a future agenda item for this meeting? Seeing none, is there public comment requesting future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item number 7 on the agenda, which is announcement of board of directors by board members. Are any members here wishing to make an announcement today? Seeing none, move to agenda item number 8, adjournment. The time is 10:17 a.m. This meeting is adjourned. You can now end the recording.
Before we leave, Councilmember Gaio, could you send me your mobile